Vision, vision. You hear this word mentioned when individuals are looking for solutions to life's challenges. But let's go a little bit deeper. Let's unpack this a little bit more. Let's define the word vision. The dictionary defines the word vision as the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. Now, in a crisis, individuals go through a myriad of emotions: hopelessness, fear, and anxiety, just to name a few. This is the part I want you to really focus on. Sharpening your vision is a life principle that you can apply today to begin solving your problems and resolving these emotions. So the question that you have to answer today is, do you have a vision? Answering this question can immediately change your life.
Where we are here to help entrepreneurs either start business or grow your already existing business. I'm here with an entrepreneur guru, my friend Liddell.
Typically, tangible assets hold their value versus non-tangible assets. I'm not against stocks at all, period. I just like for my money to be backed by something that's tangible, physical, that I can go see it and feel it's mine.
What it do, baby? It's your partner. We in this thing, man. It's that kind of move day, y'all. Y'all know what time it is, man. We finna get into this thing, guys. We having a little bit of issues on our Instagram side, guys. So we'll try to get that solved as fast as we can. But if not, no worries. We'll live stream this again, going just on Instagram, so we don't know what's going on. Anyways, guys, let's jump right into this. We're gonna be talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. That has been a lot of the dialogue of what's been going on in the media. The media has been, besides it talking about the raid of Mar-a-Lago, there's been a lot of discussion around this act. And so I thought it'd be a good idea for me to kind of look at it and say, okay, what's in this thing? What's in the Inflation Reduction Act? But before we actually dive into this, I thought it would be wise for us to look at what has been said by a couple of individuals. You'll see one, an exchange between Kevin O'Leary and a retired former politician on the Democrat side. They're on CNBC. Let's look at two experts talk about this, and let's see exactly what's been going on. Okay, guys? So let's hear what they're saying, and then we'll kind of unpack it a little bit more on what it is. Here we go. Let's see what they're talking about.
On a negative side, but I know that you have problems with this bill, and I want you to spell out what they are so that we can have a debate about it.
Well, let's start with the fact that it's a very partisan bill. There's no agreement on any of these policies. We know that with certainty by looking at the vote. Number two, and I understand everybody's having fun with this. Naming it anti-inflation is a joke. This is going to be very inflationary almost immediately because we're printing billions of dollars. So it's not going to help there at all. And it's sort of a build back better inflation bill because it has some derivatives of the initial big vision. So you've got a situation, and I'm not into politics, I'm into policy, I'm an investor. I'm trying to figure out what happens next should this pass? And what does it mean to me as an investor? What do I do with this policy? And so I asked myself, well, nobody's happy. So if I think about what's going to occur in the midterms, if the idea here was to get this bill driven through, to show accomplishment of this administration, and again, I'm bipartisan on this because I know with certainty any administration loses momentum in midterms. So it's important that this administration got something done. But is this going to solve inflation? Inflation right now is around the voter, is around food and energy. Energy's rolled over a bit, that's good. And of course, anything can happen till November 8th. But the rest of this bill, highly inflationary, ain't gonna help, gonna be lots of unhappy people. And in various close races, whether they be Senate or otherwise, I think what occurs, and again, it's a speculation on my part, but I'm gonna invest on this premise. This is going to be the last legislation this administration ever gets to put through after November 8th. One of the reasons Pelosi went to Taiwan was she knows, and she's going to be a very successful politician, it's over. She's not going to be speaker after this midterm election. And she made her move, and I applaud her for it. It was very gutsy. But bottom line is, this is last chance for romance on policy, and then it's total gridlock, and that's a good thing.
Donna Edwards.
I want you guys to understand what he was talking about. He's talking about just specific policy. I want you to see the contrast on the approaches. You have a investor businessman like myself, and then you also have a politician. Look at the different ideologies, the different philosophies. Listen.
Edwards, what do you say?
Well, I think Kevin has a lot of wishful thinking there. This is a big win for the president and for Biden. And I think, as you described, it comes on the heels of several really big policy victories over this last month. On top of that, adding, jobs into the economy, which is outpacing anything that we've seen. And so what the bill does is it provides consumers with something real and something tangible. If they want to add a new heat pump like I do, then they'll get a tax credit for it. These credits will extend over the course of about 10 years. And so it's not like putting all $370 billion into the economy right now. For business, it includes things like manufacturing credits to incentivize domestic manufacturing, particularly on high technology, which is what we need to do to wean ourselves off of China as a resource. Again, spread out over 10 years. It's the largest investment in the green economy that we've ever had, particularly when it comes to electric vehicles, to the previous bill, making sure that we have an infrastructure that supports that. This is a sweeping victory for the president and for Democrats in Congress, and it's something that they'll be able to run on.
Let me just come back to you before we go back to Kevin for a second, though. What do you think the long-term implications are going to be on both the corporate minimum tax? Do you think that there's going to be a long-term or short-term implication in terms of jobs there? To the buybacks, the one.
But bottom line, Andrew, on this is, does it make the United States of America more competitive in the G20 or less competitive? There is no question to that outcome. Less competitive. The whole idea about corporate taxes is corporations create jobs for people in America. 65% of jobs are created by small business. And look, whether you're $1 billion income business or you're not, the more you tax, the more you suck out of the system, the less jobs are created, the less competitive you are. This is a very bad policy for corporate competitiveness. And you really want to stay in the middle of the pack of the G20 in terms of corporate tax, where we are right now. This slowly grinds it up. We ran around the world telling everybody 15% was a great idea. Nobody followed us. We did it to ourselves. We hurt ourselves. It's a self-inflicted wound. Bad policy.
Now, I want you guys to kind of see exactly what he's talking about. You have a clear distinction of different perspectives. You have a businessman, a well-known individual that's on Shark Tank and a multi-billionaire. Okay, he's a billionaire. Kevin O'Leary going against talking contrary to a retired Democrat politician, and they're talking about this actual bill itself, the Inflation Reduction Act. You see, he spoke about policies. You see, she spoke about philosophy. Two different things. So, guys, now, I'm a terms guy. My whole thing is about terms, definitions. So, now let's jump into this thing real fast. All right, guys. Now, I believe that since the name of the policy is the Inflation Reduction Act, I thought that it'd be wise for us to kind of revisit the definition of what inflation is. Let's go to our old trusty guys, Investorpedia, and let's look at the definition of inflation. Here we go.
Inflation is the increase in prices of goods or services over time. Dan just got paid and needs to buy groceries. Dan heads to the grocery store and loads up his cart with the items that he needs. These items cost Dan a total of $100. A year later, Dan returns to the grocery store with $100 to purchase the same items. However, now the same items cost $105 and Dan is forced to remove an item from his cart. Dan has experienced the effects of a 5% inflation rate. Dan must pay $5 extra to purchase the same items that cost $100 only a year ago. Inflation leads to higher prices and lower purchasing power. It's usually a monetary phenomenon caused by a country printing more money than is justified by the country's wealth. When more dollars are issued for a limited amount of assets, the value of each dollar is decreased. Many countries' central banks set an inflation rate target of 2 to 3% per year.
All right, guys, that is a simple definition of what inflation is. It's too much currency flowing to too few goods. Extremely simple, not hard to understand. So if that's the case, how is this actually decreasing? Does what Congress did and the president signed, does it meet that definition that you just heard? Again, inflation is too much currency flowing to too few goods. Okay. And now I thought it'd be wise for us now to go here. Let's go here real fast. Now, how did Congress pay for this bill? Because we got the definition of inflation. Now let's really unpack exactly how Congress was able to do what they did. It's extremely simple. Extremely simple. Okay. Now let's go here. All right. Now we're going to revisit. We're going to do another recap on how money is created. Now I went through this before in the past, but I want you guys to see exactly what's going on. Again, pay attention to what he's saying because he's going to tell you exactly how Congress, who has the power of the purse, how they actually printed this out. Okay, how they created money. Listen very clearly. All right, here we go.
As the US dollar is the majority of the world's currency, I'm going to use the United States as our example. It all starts when some politician says, vote for me and I'll make sure the government provides you more free stuff than my opponent will. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. So to provide that supposedly free stuff, the politicians vote for the country to spend more than its income. This is called deficit spending. To pay for that deficit spending, the Treasury borrows currency by issuing a bond. So what's a bond? If you think about it, a bond is really nothing but a glorified IOU. It's a pretty piece of paper with numbers printed on it that says, loan me $1 trillion today, and I promise over a 10-year period I'm going to pay you back that $1 trillion plus interest. But what you need to understand is that Treasury bonds are our national debt. These glorified IOUs are to be paid back by you and I and our descendants through future taxation.
Yeah.
Therefore, when the government issues a bond, it steals prosperity out of the future so that it can spend it today. The Treasury then holds a bond auction, and the world's largest banks show up and compete to buy part of our national debt and make a profit on it by earning interest. You'll notice that as we move through this process, the big banks are there, taking a cut every step of the way. This isn't by chance, as you'll see shortly. Then, through a shell game called open market operations, the banks get to sell some of those bonds to the Federal Reserve at a profit. To pay for the bonds, the Federal Reserve opens up its big old checkbook and writes bad, bogus, counterfeit checks that should bounce because they're drawn on an account that always has a zero balance. There isn't one penny in there. To quote from the Boston Federal Reserve, when you or I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover that check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which that check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money. The Fed then hands those checks to the banks, and at this point, currency springs into existence. The banks then take that currency and buy more bonds at the next Treasury auction. But what is a check? A check is also an IOU. When you write a check, you're making a note that says, here's my IOU for cash. All you have to do is go to the bank and pick it up. Now, it's very, very important that you understand this process because we're going to come back later and show you the devastating effect this has on you. The Treasury issues IOUs, bonds. The banks then buy those IOUs with currency. The Federal Reserve then writes IOUs, checks, and hands them to the banks in exchange for the Treasury's IOUs, the bonds. And currency is created. So what's really happening is the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are just swapping IOUs, using the banks as middlemen, and abracadabra, presto, currency magically springs into existence. This process repeats and repeats over and over again enriching the banks and indebting the public by raising the national debt. The end result is that there's a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury. This process is also where all paper currency comes from. The Federal Reserve and
Now, guys, excuse me, very simple. That let you know exactly how Congress actually paid for this bill. They printed it out of thin air, bought from the future, swapping IOUs, and presto, money's created. Notice on the glorified IOU called the bond, there's a debt attached to the bond. Now you know how they actually print stuff and how inflation actually happens. We got the definition of inflation, all right? We also got how they actually paid for the bill. Ms. Kamicha said a nice definition. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. But that is how Congress paid for that bill. Okay? We don't have a money fairy, guys. That doesn't exist. If that was the case, you'll never have inflation. Okay? Time to go back to class. Now, let's keep going. All right, guys. Now, you've actually heard about this. You've heard about what's going on now. I want to talk about two of the things that's actually in this inflationary bill. That's called the Inflation Reduction Act, okay? The first one is the 15% corporate tax. I want to break that down real quickly, okay? And we're going to go back to Investorpedia. We're going to go back there. Where did it go? Boom. Okay. I guess it's gone. One sec here. And there you go. Here we go. Boom. Now, back to Investorpedia, guys. We're going back here, okay? Remember, we used Investorpedia's definition on what inflation was. The bill itself is about 800 plus pages long. I know you guys would want to sit here all night, have me go line by line through that bill, so I won't bore you with those facts. But we're going to focus on the 15% corporate minimum tax right now, okay? I'm going to read this bill, and then we're going to unpack it, okay? It says, the bill introduces a new 15% minimum tax on corporations to help pay for the climate and healthcare measures. Okay. It says the tax applies to companies that generate $1 billion in annual revenue, large companies. The Joint Committee of Taxation, the JCT, estimates that the tax will raise $222 billion in revenue over the next decade. Okay. And then it has exemptions. Exemptions from the tax demanded by Senator Kristen Sinema out of Arizona to secure her yes vote included exemption for companies that use accelerated depreciation to help pay for new investments. I won't go into what that is because that'll bore you. Okay, so if you want to know what that is, look it up and read it. It's very simple to understand, but it can get very complex. Number two is exclusion of small businesses that are subsidiaries of private equity firms. Again, that can get very complex as well, so I won't bore you on this. I want to take you back to what Kevin Lee was talking about when he talks about the environment for what taxes does. Well, what tax does is it sucks money out of the system, okay? So, and also when you begin to overregulate or overtaxate things, what happens is, does it make the environment for capital investment friendly? The answer is no, it does not at all, period. And also, how is it going to raise this $222 billion revenue? Notice it talks about the tax applies to companies that generate over $1 billion annual earnings. There's a problem there because if they're making $1 billion in annual revenues, you better believe these companies are very sophisticated. They have sophisticated attorneys, sophisticated tax consultants, and sophisticated bookkeepers and accountants. Okay, I have that. Okay, I have that, guys. So, and I'll give you an example. Here's what I would do if it was a counter move. Okay, do I think that they're going to raise this money? No, this is not going to happen at all. Let me tell you how. So, what would be the counter move for these companies? Okay, because this is called the counter move. I'm going to use Apple as an example. Okay, Apple has about $90+ billion cash in the bank. $90 billion. Okay, Well, 15% of 90 billion, I'm gonna get the calculator. I sure am. Don't you worry about it. Now, 90 billion times 15%, that's about 13 and a half billion dollars, so to speak. I'm sorry, not 50, 13 and a half billion dollars. I mean, what it may be. So let's say it's 13 and a half billion. They got $90 billion in the bank. So what would I do if I was a company like that at that size? Simple. I just put the $13.5 billion into the bank, borrow against that $13.5 billion at 1% interest rate. I've notified the 15%. Simple. Billion-dollar companies like that, and again, they're focusing on $1 billion companies. Okay, very simple. $1 billion companies. Let's look at it again. I got the calculator. I sure do. Okay, 15% of $1 billion is $150 million. If their annual revenue is $150 million, what would I do? Very simple. Either acquire more debt, simple, to scale my business even more, or if I have that liquid cash like an Apple, I just put it in the bank and borrow against it. I've nullified the 15% tax. Nullified it. That will never happen. These are very sophisticated companies. Never happen. It's a pipe dream. Won't happen at all, period. Because of the level of these companies. And also, if I'm a company as well, right now, debt is your best friend. Why? Because debt cannot be taxed. How is that? We just looked at how money was created. That's debt. If you look at the glorified IRU bond, it said it's a 10-year bond. Notice how the bonds are always 10 years. And it says, I'll pay you back interest over this 10 years. That's called debt. That money is not taxed. So if I'm a company, $1 billion and above side, I'm just going to acquire more debt. Simple to scale my business. Not hard to do, guys. Make sense? All right, let's go to the next one. Prescription drugs. Now, let's go next. Prescription drugs, okay? Boom. This one got very interesting. So what is this about? What is this about? Let's walk through it. The prescription drug price reform. This one is very interesting, guys. This bill allows Medicare to negotiate prices for some drugs for the first time. Okay. This is a policy Democrats have attempted to enact over objections from pharmaceutical industries for many years. Okay. The provisions are expected to save $265 billion over 10 years, according to analysts by the CBO. Okay. Specifically, the legislation would let Medicare negotiate lower prices for 10 high-cost drugs beginning in 2026. Okay, that's about 4 years away. Okay. This would jump to 20 drugs by 2019. Okay. Companies that refuse, here's the key thing, companies that refuse to negotiate will be subject to a 95% sales tax on that drug. That's a high tax amount, 95%. The bill includes a ceiling on the negotiated price of the specific drug. Okay, so there's a ceiling. Okay. What the ceiling is, we don't know. Notice it didn't detail a price point. It says it's ceiling. Okay, detail is this devil. The devil's in the details. Moderate Democrats, including Senator Sinema, inserted a requirement that price negotiations only apply to older drugs. 9 years for most, 13 years for biologic drugs. Again, the key thing is this here: 95% sales tax penalty levied on companies that refuse to negotiate drug prices with Medicare. Number one is the issues that I kind of see. I don't see a ceiling at all, and there's not a lot of details there when it comes to parameters there. So is it safe to say government has kind of free reign? And it sounds like the government actually has the power to set pricing. I know the government has that much power. So if that's the case, why didn't that work when it comes to houses, cars, iPhones, Androids, cameras, microphones, computers? If government has this much power, why can't they do it on other stuff? Interesting. And number two, what trips me out is this here is what I kind of also see is this here is if a company refuses to negotiate on said drugs, because we don't know what drugs that they're talking about. We don't know. It's 95% tax. So those smaller pharmaceutical companies, what does that do for them? Well, let's kind of break it down real fast. Let me come back on the screen real fast. All right. So you can see me look at me. Okay. R&D, which means research and development. Every pharmaceutical company has that type of setup. Research and development. They're going to research drugs and then develop drugs. R&D. Okay. Let's just say, for instance, hypothetically, it cost $10 to make said drug. $10. Okay. $10 to make it. And let's just say this here. The government walks in and says, okay, well, the ceiling on this price point, you got to sell it at $5. So it costs the drug company $10, and the ceiling that the Medicare comes in and negotiates says it's $5. Now, this pharmaceutical company they have an issue they have to now iron out. If they refuse to negotiate, what they sell at is going to tax at 95%. So, again, let's use simple numbers. 95% tax on $100 is $95. That's a high tax. If they refuse to negotiate, what that means is smaller pharmaceutical companies, they're gone. Out of 5,000. Because the R&D is shut down because they can't make any more drugs, which means you're going to continue to create a black market. People buying drugs off illegally. Who said it's called a black market? Number two is now what's happening is some drugs won't get made. Why? Because of the fact that the government says at the ceiling, you don't know what that number is. And if that is the case, if a drug costs $10 and the Medicare says you sell it at $5, the company is losing $5 a drug, well, per sale. Is that a good business model? I would say no. See, whenever government overreaches like this, it doesn't give a friendly environment. So you'll see quality go down when it comes to drug development. That'll go down for those big companies. Why? They have to reduce their cost. So what they normally would invest in research and development is now probably been sliced in half. Because why? The government, Medicare can now set pricing on those older drugs. Let's just say, for instance, that one of those older drugs goes back into research and development and discover better ingredients to be able to produce a better performing drug. That's probably gone. Why? The cost of goods, COGS. That's more money invested, which the government says, we don't care about none of that. I know you paid 10, but the ceiling is 5. That's going to breed destruction. I don't like making investments or making decisions on theories. I love proof of concept. And none of this being the proof of concept. That's why I wanted to play for you initially first. Kevin O'Leary, a real life investor like myself, and a politician. You see the difference in thinking. Kevin O'Leary is proof of concept, and the politician was all theory, philosophy. That's all she was. All she was. Now, what's the solution on their side? Guys, it's very simple. What they would do is very simple. They're going to reduce the quality of the drugs. They got to slice the R&D budget in half because of this here. Whenever you actually have high taxation and more regulation, what actually happens? Quality goes down. Because why? It costs more money. Think about it. A 95% tax? They've been held hostage. So I don't see how this even makes any fiscal sense at all. But most of the time, what comes out of the government doesn't make any fiscal sense because most of it is theory. None of it is proof of concept. None of it is. Doesn't make any sense at all. Now, interesting, guys, that we also have we have one of the participants that's Democrat that actually voted for this bill. They voted yes for this bill. And I want you to listen directly to, and this is the best video I could actually find, guys, on this, what he actually says about what's in the bill. Listen very intently, okay? Listen very intently. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see here. And before I go real fast, guys, we got to comment real fast. It says, Comedian said, yes, Medicare pays almost nothing. More than likely won't be able to negotiate. There it is. I'm just trying to tell you, this is going to punish the working man. Yes, it is. All right, guys, here we go. Let's go over that. Let's see what Jamie Raskin said about this. Let's go and see what he actually says. Here we go. Again, this is the best video I could find, guys. Don't shout me down. The best video I could find. Here we go. Let's just see what he says.
As soon as the act goes into effect, I hope that all of the provisions will begin to work. I know that those who've been blaming President Biden for the inflation going up are now giving President Biden all the credit for inflation going down. I know nothing. So we're moving things in the right direction already.
And what parts of the bill do you think will quickly work on that specifically?
Next question.
German environmental.
So, guys, I want you to kind of see that. Notice when he's asked for specifics of what's in the bill that will reduce inflation, what did he say? Next question. Why? Because it's all theory. There's no proof of concept there. There never is. There never is. So, and here's committee. She said, I work in healthcare billing, so I see it firsthand. This is someone who's actually working in the industry now. So this is not a theory. This is reality, guys. So, that's all I have for today, guys. I just wanted you guys to actually see exactly what's going on. So now you actually, so what is your counter move? Okay. Because this is called the Counter Move podcast. You're going to have to begin to get more wiser in financial literacy, higher financial IQ. From a legality standpoint, widen the circle and begin to get it in with some attorneys. Okay. And begin to read these bills because you have an election coming up in 2022, and begin asking these politicians and candidates who want your vote specifics. If they answer like Jamie Raskin's answered, do not vote for them. Do not. And if you do vote for them still, and they let you down, do not begin to complain because you knew better. But you decided to still vote for the unfit candidate. No matter if it's a mayor, a city council, a city manager, a governor. I didn't get that. A governor or a congressman or a senator. You better begin to ask him some pointed questions. Because if not, unfortunately, you will get screwed over again. All of what you have seen, they printed out of thin air. So here's the question The answer, Liddell, you asked the question, does it really produce inflation? The answer is an emphatic no. No, it never will. Why? They printed it out of thin air. You can't print your way out of inflation. So let me get this straight. People, they think it's wise to do the exact same thing that caused the inflation, and that's going to reverse inflation. If you believe that, I'm going to pray for you tonight, because you don't understand simple math and definitions. You can't change definitions to spin this away. You cannot. So the answer is an emphatic no. And the thing about it is, as you heard him say, they know it. That's why at the end, Jamie Raskin said that next question. He knew there was nothing at all. He's up for re-election, guys, in the state of, I believe he's in the state of, what state is he in? He's in the state of let me check. He's in Maryland. So I don't know if you listen to me in Maryland or not. If he's up for a re-election, he's incumbent. You just heard what he just actually said. Now it's in your court. So guys, thank you so much for your time. I hope I added some value to you. Again, I always say I don't want this to become political. I want it to be extremely down the middle, based off of definitions and finances. That's it. And so guys, God bless you. Have a good day. And we'll see you next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on the Counter Move. All right, guys, before you leave, you know what? Every time I say it, take that picture for your mom because I look fresh, cold, clean. Now holla at you, partner. Starting the business, one of the most important things is the name, which exchange with the brand. I was reading John 3:16. That's when the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, 316 count. We are a real estate development and finance company. Also, the advice that I would give to somebody that is looking to start their own business, don't be afraid to jump out there. Don't be afraid to be mentored by someone that may know more than you may know, because business is a team sport. For the first 2 or 3 years, it was a little bit of a struggle because you're trying to find your footing in the real estate marketplace. Once I found my niche, it took about 3 to 5 years to go from zero to right now. We manage probably around like 15 to 20 million dollars worth of real estate. The goal is never the destination; it's the journey. I think Kobe Bryant said that. What made him so great was he said, "I never focused on winning the 5 championships. I focused on the journey to winning the 5 championships. Mastering skills throughout the journey, I will naturally automatically get to the destination. Automatically." I am Liddell Bugs with 316 Capital, and I'm an entrepreneur.